Well, listen, we're going to go ahead and get started. First off, listen, I want to just say how grateful I am for everyone being on the call, both the participants and the attendees. For those of you that are going to share your stories, I'm so grateful for you being willing to do that, accepting the invitation. We're going to be able to learn a lot from you. For the members of the Handler team that have come on, I just have to tell you how thankful and grateful I am for you helping us remain focused on our business at hand, serving our clients, while all of this chaos of this pandemic has threatened all of our businesses and the world. And, you know, frankly, we're just faced with some new questions and some new challenges and obstacles to overcome. I mean, there's just so many new things to learn. I just have to say I'm encouraged how we've come together just on a platform such as this to share our collective experiences, to really learn from one another so that we can make, as business leaders, the best decisions for our team members and for our businesses and for our communities at large. And this morning, we're going to hear from just some absolutely incredible leaders in the marketplace. I've had the opportunity to spend time virtually, of course, with each of them, discussing and really just listening to some of the challenges that they've been faced with and are facing and may be facing in the coming hours and the coming days. In fact, just as we were talking here, one of the members mentioned that they've had a conflict come up. They're going to have to hop in and off, and then I totally get that. Right before I got on the line, there was a similar situation. So I know that many of you on the call, you know, these represent some of the same challenges and obstacles that you're facing in the business. Because of the commonality that we all share, we can kind of come together, learn from each other, from the experiences and the participants. So just really excited to hear from folks that are representing businesses like mine with tens of people, but there's people on this call and people that are presenting that have hundreds of people and frankly, thousands of people. And so very excited to have that be the case. And so as we kind of reflect on that, I'm just grateful for that. And I want to go ahead and just get started. So we're going to be hearing from leaders today, and each one of them will be spending about 5 minutes sharing their story. They're going to each share a little bit about themselves, their business, and the impact that COVID-19 has had, what they're learning, some of the questions that they're really currently wrestling with today in their organization. Once we hear from all of their stories, we're going to move into a Q&A. And so when you registered, you were given an opportunity to ask a question. And so we're going to start with those questions first. And if you have any questions along the way, again, please use the chat feature. Go ahead and type in the bottom right what your question is. We're going to make a note of that. Depending upon how our time goes, we'll go ahead and answer as many questions as we can. So let's go ahead and get started by introducing our first leader and friend. As you all have heard, the hospitality and restaurant industry has absolutely been the hardest hit, and they've had to adjust the fastest. Ryan Turner is the partner of a restaurant consortium that includes Local 3, MTH Pizza Warhorse, and Muss and Turner's. Ryan, are you there this morning?
I'm here.
Are you here? All right, Ryan. Hey, thanks so much for being here with us this morning, and thanks for starting us off.
Well, my pleasure, and appreciate the opportunity. And thanks for everyone to be on this call. I hope I can be of some assistance this morning. So you guys are all reading about what's going on with our industry. I'll just take you through briefly. We were about a $12 million company with about 175 employees, including management. Last Monday, the 16th, after we saw our sales literally fall off the cliff between the 13th and the 15th, we found ourselves in a very harrowing situation. We got our leadership team together and, basically trying to stay calm, operate with zero visibility, having a feedback loop of misinformation that was changing constantly, and a passenger load of people who were literally scared to death that we were going to be going down. And so that's where we were last Monday. We made a decision at first that we were going to shut down. I think even at our top levels of government right now, everyone is dealing with the moral conflict of the health of people physically versus the health of people financially and the ramifications from that. And so it was an incredibly challenging situation to be in. We said we were going to close down. We consulted with a couple of people we trust, and we actually very quickly made a decision that we were going to just reformat our business model and adapt to the situation and fight like hell. And so we got our team back together. We had to make incredibly hard decisions, like how do we act small? We signed 145 people up for temporary layoff relief. Most incomprehensible, most challenging decision we've ever had to make. We know a lot of people talk about the people they work with being family, and it is a real thing for us. We asked all of our salaried people to take a 50% pay reduction for the foreseeable future, and we changed our business model on the fly. A lot of people don't look at restaurants in this way, but we're in many ways experts in logistics. And we're also scrappy and we're resilient. And we got the team together. We were able to go to carry out only as far in delivery as well. Changed our dining rooms into a different setup completely, keeping social distancing in play. We created online ordering, which we did not have for all of our restaurants, and did everything we could to adapt as quickly as possible. And so we decided that we were going to feed all of our staff who we had to lay off and their families. We're also feeding restaurant staff from around us who that chose to close. And we're doing everything we can to take care of our people. We have an employee support fund that people are contributing to. We're diverting all tips that are being taken in with carry out and delivery to feed our staff. And the people, our community, stepping up in amazing ways. We've sought deferments from our bank and investors, signed up for SBA relief. So there's a lot of major things that have happened, and I know I'm missing a lot. I mean, some of the lessons that I've learned have been more really affirmation than anything else, is that relationship capital is a real thing, and you never know that balance until you really need it. We were banking on the reservoir of trust that we had built with all of our stakeholders. Probably 2 weeks ago, we were talking about this and talking to our staff about very openly and transparently that life as we knew it was about to change. We just did not realize how drastic and how quick it was going to happen. But the reservoir of trust and support has been way deeper than we ever imagined. Another lesson, again, an affirmation: adversity does expose true character, true grit, and motives, and it's an incredibly painful audit on our culture. And I'm so proud, could not feel more fortunate than I do right now today, which sounds counterintuitive. I've never felt more scared yet more fortunate in my life. And another lesson is gratitude really is the oh shit handle of life. And everyone needs to focus on that. Questions that we're contending with. What are we wrestling with? How long will this be the new norm? How much is the governor going to deem our industry essential? And if they do, then we will be able to continue to do carry out and delivery, and we will have some oxygen coming in. The question is, how much oxygen do we need to get to the other side? And no one knows what the other side is. And so we're all contending with the same issue. And the other is, how do we maintain the relationship capital that we've built, tap into it like we've never done it before, but also make sure that balance is growing. And on the other side, all of our relationships with all of our key stakeholders, every one of them, staff, banks, investors, vendors, everyone is stronger than it's ever been before.
Wow. Listen, Ryan, thank you for giving us a preview of what your life has been like, and frankly, what every restaurateur has been going through, and some of the decisions. I know I can probably speak from a lot of people on the call that we've heard the news about how this is impacting the front line of restaurants, and you've just given us an inside look. And the thing that I just loved is that it's an audit on our culture. I mean, how strong is that? Listen, if it wasn't for our next speaker and next presenter or participant, we wouldn't be here today. So thank you, Phil, for your questions to me over text and on the phone. I mean, your desire to continue to do the right thing for your business, frankly, it's just super inspiring to me. Phil Brown is the Chief Human Resources Officer for Mohawk Industries, a global leader in the flooring business. Phil, are you there?
I am, Eric. Thanks.
Thanks for being here with us this morning and sharing your story.
Eric, first of all, I appreciate you organizing the forum. I think it's important to share lessons learned. We get it internally, but to hear from other industries and listening to Ryan's story, I just wish we were half as agile as they've been in a really incredible short period of time. But relationship capital was a term that we're going to steal shamelessly. A little bit about Mohawk. We're the world's largest flooring manufacturer based in Northwest Georgia. We have about 42,000 employees worldwide, about 20,000 in the U.S. The thing that our non-U.S. employees have given us, they've kind of given us a insight into what's coming. We have a small group in China. We saw that happening January, February, but we obviously didn't react very fast. We have a large operation in Italy and Belgium who are in the heat of everything. And it's been interesting to watch them go through the process and gradually slowing down their operations and keeping people working as long as they can. We kind of think about the decisions we're making. We're trying to balance three principles. We're trying to balance this notion of slowing the spread of the virus, so social distancing, but we want to protect our employees with prevention activities, and we've done some surveys. We've communicated hot and heavy, and we know people understand that. And we want to be able to support business continuity. And we think it's a balance of all three. It's not a priority over one. Our real question is, what's this economic cycle going to look like? Is it going to be V-shaped, or is it going to drop off to nothing, and how long will it stay there? For us right now, just being able to predict cash flow is a huge question because that determines how long we and our customers can operate. So when we look at Italy, we got over 6,000 people in that business, and they've only had 2 confirmed cases among their employees, which is a phenomenal number. So all the preventive actions they started are continuing to work well. Spain and Poland continue to operate. In Belgium, we've gradually closed almost everything, not so much because we couldn't afford to run the business, but employees, because subsidies in Europe are much better on unemployment than here, people through fear stopped coming to work. But also we know that customers will eventually stop taking orders. But this more liberal subsidy policies in Europe makes a big difference at these kind of activities. We had a call this morning with our global HR leaders, and the young lady that's head of HR in China, she shared their results, and we've all looked online. When you see how they flatten the curve, it's really phenomenal. But our offices there were closed for a month. Absolutely nobody could come at all. In Russia, interesting, you don't see much in the press about Russia, but they reacted very quickly. They administered 150,000 tests along the Chinese border back in February. As soon as they saw it happening, they have tests and the U.S. doesn't. I'm not sure what that says about us. In Northwest Georgia, we have about 9,000 employees, and so far operations are running. We've had 2 confirmed cases, and a team has responded really well on those 2 cases. One was an office employee. His last day he was in the office was last Wednesday. He had some symptoms. He got tested in our on-site clinic on Friday. We got the results at 3 a.m. Monday. He was quarantined himself that whole time, so we immediately sanitized the work area, restrooms, everything else, communicated to employees, but he was through the incubation period. We had another one that started last week in a plant. We've closed that department. We've sanitized. People are staying out for the prescribed period. and then they'll come back. We've worked hard on communicating prevention. We've worked hard on social distancing. We've worked hard on trying to get information to people as many ways as we can. We communicate through electronic signs in all of our operations. We have about 100 people across the country that manage that information as a part of their day-to-day jobs. And we surveyed all of them. We'll continue to use them as a place to go. Our team has triaged about over 200 situations, people with symptoms, or I know somebody with symptoms, or I know somebody with a confirmed case. What do I do? And we've tried to respond to those as quickly as possible. I was reminded, and we are thinking about this whole thing about fear and how do we help people overcome that fear. Now, one of the things we're seeing, the longer people come to work and it continues to be okay, it starts to subside a little bit. But one of my executives reminded me the other day about, if you go back and look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we all have been focused for decades on how we move up that hierarchy. And right now, everybody's dropping down. Everybody wants to make sure they're safe and healthy. And beyond that, as people are being laid off, as we've already heard and seen, and my physiological needs going to be handled? Am I going to have food, water, all the basics? That's got to be a big concern on all of our minds. Right now, we're trying to think through policies for layoff of exempt staff. We've had exempt staff layoff in closures over the years, but nothing of the significance that we're expecting as we go forward, large scale. So any input on what people are doing on the exempt side of the equation would be helpful. I believe that we have to continue as companies to influence the state. We were in calls last week, and one of the things we recommended to the governor's office is, as we start moving into layoffs, the state unemployment offices are going to be covered up. And there's no way they can handle it. Even though in Georgia you enroll online, everything's backed up. We suggested to the governor, let employers pay the state benefits, whatever that amount is. We know the max is $365. So if it's $365, we pay it through our payroll system and reimbursed by the state. That would be a way to help employees get funds faster. They would be getting it from their company, so they appreciate that support. We don't have any feedback yet, but we know it was heard, and we know they're thinking about it. So anybody that wants to help push on the legislators, and also to enable us, if we chose to subsidize those benefits without reducing the benefit to an individual. If companies were willing to do that and had the cash flow to do it, how can we do it right now? If we did it for a laid off employee, we reduce their benefit from the state, which doesn't make sense. So overall, a lot's happening. It's happening fast. And I wish we were as responsive as Ryan's organization. So it took some good lessons. Thank you, Eric.
Well, thank you, Phil. And hey, that's we went from a small business to a global business, and those are some interesting lessons in the hierarchy of needs. That's pretty interesting, and so thanks so much, Phil. Appreciate you sharing. And if any of you have any insight to the questions that Ryan had talked about relative to the economic cycle, I know that's something that we all are wondering, or if there's some work that you're doing and spending time on relative to your policies and exempt employees, please feel free to use the chat box to identify that, because we'd like to have you share as we continue to move forward. So thanks again for sharing, Phil. So our next participant is another great leader and friend. He's been also wrestling hard with some of the same issues we've all been facing as he leads a national workforce with offices in more than half the states in the United States. Avi Stadler is a great leader that reminds me most of the Stockdale paradox in Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. And so, Avi, are you there?
I'm here. Thanks, Eric.
Avi, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it and sharing your story as it's unfolding.
My pleasure. Again, my name's Avi Stadler. I'm located here in Atlanta, but I am the general counsel for a national court reporting company. So we have offices in 40 locations throughout the country. and work very closely with Eric's team on our recruiting solution. So it's been a great partnership for us. My job is a weird one. I am the only practicing lawyer for my company. We have about 350 or so employees, but we also employ thousands and thousands of independent contractors throughout the country. We are a court reporting company, so basically our bread and butter is that we send court reporters out to locations or host them in our office so that attorneys can take depositions and have a stenographer present to record the testimony and create transcripts. So we serve the litigation industry. My job is, like I said, a strange one. I'm the only practicing lawyer, but I also serve as the head of HR, the chief of staff to our CEO, and am intimately involved in drafting and reviewing and working through all policies that we put out at the company. The last couple weeks have been a lot for a lot of us, obviously, but a lot for me. I am also the one who has to read every single order from every governor, mayor, county, whatever, to determine if we can continue to operate in those particular jurisdictions. I have found that it is challenging because I was about to go to bed last night as Mayor Bottoms was doing her, Mayor Bottoms, the mayor of Atlanta, was doing her press release. And I find that it's very frustrating that these politicians are putting out these orders typically after hours and requiring businesses to make very difficult and quick decisions on whether to stay open or not stay open, and having to somehow communicate that to employees and leadership, after hours. And what I have also found is they like to do the press conference first and then wait about an hour or so before they actually put out the piece of paper that says what's going on. And it's been challenging and frustrating, and there's an immense amount of responsibility that I feel personally for our people and our independent contractors and everyone around the country. One thing that makes us slightly different, I guess, Ryan, you are in the same boat because of your takeout business of food, is that we are a professional services company that services the legal industry, and in most cases we are considered essential because the administration of justice requires us to be available to take down testimony that is necessary. So it's just been a lot. We've put out new policies. We've drafted new policies related to, stopping travel and sending every single human being that we can out of the office and working from home. We are fortunate in that we use this Zoom technology as part of our core business, so we have a very good familiarity. I know the Handler team has a good familiarity with it too because we have our weekly meetings on it, but we use this to record testimony. One of the other challenges that we have is that laws in various states do not permit the remote swearing of witnesses, so it makes it challenging for us to continue to do business remotely in certain jurisdictions. We have been successful in lobbying the Supreme Court of a number of different states to go ahead and issue temporary orders permitting remote swear-in so that lawyers can continue to work and continue to let the system of justice go on. But it's just exhausting, as I'm sure everybody on this call has experienced over the last time. What I've learned is that you have to be nimble and you have to be able to react quickly to things, but also try to carve out some time every single day to either have some time alone or exercise. I exercise, that's my thing, but like have time with your family. That conference calls are typically, I'm surprised that my daughter has not popped in here to join our conference call. She likes to join them, and she has participated. My company is very family friendly in that way, and everyone sort of laughs and enjoys the break. It's that that meme that went out, or that the thing with the guy who's being interviewed on whatever financial channel his kids came in. It's he sort of set the table for us all to be able to do that. As with everybody on the call, I mean, we're continuing to wrestle with how do we deal with our workforce. Obviously, we want to continue paying people, and we want people to continue being and feeling valuable and like they're contributing, but we obviously have seen a slowdown just like everybody else has in our business. And so how do we wrestle with that and treat folks humanely at the same time? I think everyone has said this, but at the same time balancing the need to stay as a going concern so that we can, overcome this at the end. We are fortunate. I think we've made a lot of good decisions leading into this where we can do a lot of what we do remotely to allow us to continue to work. And we have rolled out products to our clients that allow them to participate in the deposition process remotely. So that allows for us to keep going. But these are the questions we wrestle with every single day. And we have basically a daily meeting with the senior management team of the company so that we can keep things moving and try to be as nimble as possible in such a changing and minute to minute changing atmosphere. So that's basically what we're going on. It's, I don't think anything we're dealing with is particularly unique to us, but it is challenging, and we have had to act quickly, and putting in policies and procedures quickly on the HR side is always challenging, but we are doing it, and there are a lot of great resources out there for those of you who need them. The best of which is the Society for Human Resources Management, which has been a godsend because they have a COVID-19 page, and we've been able to use their policies and procedures. And law firms are very, very happy to talk to you these days. Every single major law firm sends me an email with all of their employment law updates. So there's no lack of people who are now experts in this field. So that's what I got, Eric.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Avi. And we got some free advice to everybody coming in just a couple of minutes. So with one of the individuals as well. So we're going to take advantage of that for sure. Let me turn to one of our attendees, and I'm going to ask Tim Gould. Tim, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Are you there?
I am, Eric. Yes. Can you hear me?
All right. Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Tim, you were kind enough to put in a question to the group, and would love it if you wouldn't mind sharing one of the questions that you had.
Yeah, absolutely. And Eric, thanks so much for doing this. It's a great benefit to me personally, and I assume for a lot of the folks on the call. So thank you for doing it.
And Tim, before we do that, just share, I'm sorry, real briefly, the company that you're representing and the role that you play, and then all in the community as well, because I think that's significant.
Sure. Yeah. First, I apologize for not having a camera. I'm just still getting used to the new world of online conference meetings and things that probably be with us for the long haul going forward. So my camera is on order, and Amazon will drop it off here probably any day. Let's see. My company, Eric's helped us with some research searches over time, but Fordham Plastics. We are a manufacturer rep for plastics manufacturing equipment. So as an example, we would call on Mohawk Carpets as an example as a potential user of our equipment, along with a range of other manufacturers, including automotive and packaging and all sorts of different things. I'm located in Smyrna. Another hat that I wear is I'm on the Smyrna City Council, and obviously we're wrestling with how to best handle ordinances and orders similar to what the city of Atlanta issued last night. The mayor recently issued an order last weekend shutting down restaurants and only allowing takeout service and things of that nature. And those orders will be pretty common, I would think, here in the coming days for cities across the state and perhaps even at county levels also. But back on the business side of things, questions I'm struggling with in our business also is cash flow. Like, how long will this cycle last? How much cash do we really need to account for, and what's it going to look like when we come out on the other end? In the meantime, a real good business practice we're trying to get better at is really how do we change some work habits for some of our young workforce who are used to going out seeing people, and how can we help them be productive working truly just from a home office perspective where they're probably working independently. They don't have oversight. So just the question is really, how do we create some good work habits for folks who are not used to being exclusively in the office? And how can we change our habits, setting up meetings with customers instead of physically going to see them? How do we make appointments with customers to set a time to have either a video conference or just a conference call? So I got ideas as we go through that, but that's really one of the main questions of creating some new work habits.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. And I'd like to not only open it up to the individuals that presented, but you can use the raise hand feature if you specifically have some comments or thoughts about maybe how you're addressing that or how you have addressed that, the whole work from home, as well as maybe some of the other things that you're addressing. Otherwise, I'll just call on you. So,
Well, Eric, if you want,
yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Avi, we actually, what's interesting is we have a very successful inside sales team at our company, and they have developed over the years a pretty strong process for how they do their work using various tools, Salesforce and Zoom and Jabber, which is our chat feature that we do. And they're really successful. And so once it was very clear to us that the outside sale, we also have an outside sales channel, which relies on, like you're saying, going to visit people and giving gifts and, taking people out to lunch and all the things that outside sales people do. We realized very quickly that what we need to do is modify our outside sales staff to be more like our inside sales staff. So immediately put in place a process that is very similar to inside sales so that they have a very structured day, and their structured day includes a certain number of required calls to clients. We gave them tools on the various products that we're selling these days, more so than others, training on each of those on those things, and we quickly got them going so that they could basically act as a bigger inside sales unit. That works for our business. Whether that works for your business, I'm not sure, but it's a way to structure their days so that they are productive and around. And one of the things that we do in our company, and again, whether you have these tools or not, we have this Jabber program, which is a Cisco product that allows us to all be online, and it lets you know when people are online. So as a manager, all of my team are listed on there. So I know that they're online, and then if I need them immediately, I can jabber with them to make sure that I'm getting what I need quickly and efficiently. And it's also a nice way to monitor to make sure that your folks are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Not that I have to worry about that. My team is great, but other teams have different issues. And also our phone system all runs through there, which again, if you have it, great. If you don't, you don't. But my office phone rings through that so that we can maintain sort of a virtual office. But I think that's workable, kind of transforming your outside sales to a more like an inside sales model. So that's what we've done.
That's great.
That's awesome. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you sharing that. Let me go back to the question that Phil had. And Phil, if you could ask that question again relative to some of the challenges that you're dealing with policy and exempt employees. I'd love for you to share that again, and then maybe what I'll do is ask Bert to kind of chime in a little bit and provide some of his perspective as well. You are you're on mute. Let's make sure you're off mute. There you go. You're good.
So the assumption we're making is if we follow the rest of the world, there's going to be large-scale layoffs, not only on the hourly side, but our exempt staff, which is unusual for us, right? So we're trying to think through the policies because once I'm inactive, then I've got PTO that's sitting out there, and how do we stay connected? So how do we think about administering traditional unemployment layoff benefits to exempt population is a question.
That's great. Appreciate that. Bert, could you share first with that question in mind, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself and who you are, but before you do that, let me just say that he's the regional managing partner in the Atlanta office for Fisher Phillips. They're one of the top law firms in labor and employment. As Avi had alluded to, they've been extremely busy. I'm very grateful for him to be here with us today. So if you wouldn't mind kind of giving us your perspective on that particular issue, what's kind of the mindset? How should employers work through that kind of an issue? And then some of maybe the other ththings that you're seeing with your clients.
Well, thanks very much for arranging this. And Avi, yes, we have lawyers out there sending all sorts of emails. If you want to check fisherphillips.com, I think we probably have the nation's leading law firm COVID-19 site out there. We've got about 30 people working behind the scenes, and it's all free for everybody. So that is a good site. I'm very proud of it. One thing that I've learned through the last 2 weeks is that every employer is in a different situation. There's no single one size fits all because the industries are different, geographies are different, your culture is different. So I don't know that I can tell you what policies to put in. We have, so we represent a lot of small medical and dental practices, and the ADA has advised dentists to shut down for 3 weeks. But we've been advising dentists on how they stay open because they feel they need to serve their patients. Again, that's sort of a one-off, but to me, that demonstrates that every single employer is different. In Ryan's case, they changed their business model and morphed and evolved with the times in a very innovative way. I think that's awesome and inspiring. Frankly, I'm enjoying this because y'all are real people as opposed to clients calling me with an immediate problem. And this is sort of my R&D field research. I'm not sure exactly, Eric, exactly what question you wanted me to answer from Phil, other than to
Well,
say policy.
I want to say, hey,
Go ahead,
Eric,
Phil.
I wanted to say, Eric, that Bert, I didn't realize you were at Fisher and Phillips, and I have been on your website and using it religiously. It's wonderful, and you guys are amazing for putting that together. I've been looking at your frequently asked questions on topics that make my head hurt, so I appreciate it very much.
Well, and I hope also not to keep plugging that, but since you are in 40 different states, you notice you found the alerts for every state.
Yep.
We actually have an essential employer task force. So we have about 8 people who are researching nothing but the question of whether a particular business is considered essential under the myriad of different local ordinances. So in terms of questions, Eric, I was going to mention that, our questions are running the gamut from large employers to small. Large employers are wanting to know whether they're integrated. So you take a large multi-state auto dealer whose name you might know, or someone that has 5 or 6 sawmills. We've been struggling with whether they have more or less than 500 employees and what their obligations are legally and practically. We've been struggling with the employment-related decisions aside and apart from these new benefits. How do you lay off people? How do you pay out their PTO? Is it required or voluntary? Do you implement new programs? And then what promises do you make about recall given the uncertainty? Now, we're representative of the country, and probably 5% of our employers have labor unions. So our clients generally have great flexibility, but there are some states that have these new predictive scheduling laws that we have to deal with. I guess that's one of the benefits of having 36 plus offices is we have a lot of people in different areas helping our clients where they are. But you'd be amazed. It's not just how do we comply with this new law? It's how do we lay people off? Do we do part-time work or do we lay everybody off? And now in Georgia, we have these new unemployment procedures. I think I've answered more unemployment cases in the past 2 weeks than I've answered in the past 2 years. So that's a boom for us. And we've been answering individual questions and trying to do these webinars so we can hit mass audiences. I've got 2 more webinars where I'm presenting to more than 100 employers in industries after this. So we're trying to provide information on our website and through these group type chats. Sorry.
Well, and in just 2 minutes, you make my head spin, okay? And that just gives us a glimpse of the variability as you started off your comment saying that no 2 businesses are the same and how they approach that scenario. It seems to me that employers, have a tremendous amount of liability as well in terms of the way that they're handling these situations, and that's got to be super scary. What would you say to employers that are concerned about that aspect? They want to do the right thing, but because we're in really uncharted territory for many of us, what advice would you give in terms of how we approach that?
Well, I think that we are trying to help most of our employers stay in business so they can have a stream of revenue. And by paying the good wages as opposed to unemployment, they keep people engaged. Um, we really have not been stressing any liability for people staying in business. I'm sure Avi can appreciate this, but imagine an insurance company defending a claim that you were somehow negligent in staying open, and they don't have to pay any negligence payment. So you would ask the opponent, how many people did you see in the past 3 weeks? Where did you go? And you'd show that they had contact with literally hundreds of people, and you'd show there's no proof of causal relationship. So for that reason, we haven't really worried too much, because most people are following the CDC guidelines and they're doing what's reasonable under these extreme circumstances. So I don't think that's a real driver for us.
Sure. Well,
Yeah, and Eric, if you don't
go ahead, Avi.
That's fine.
Yeah, please.
We talk about the law and I get excited because that's one hat that I like actually, that I like a lot. But for those of you who haven't, taken a look at, and I'm sure Bert, I know Bert, you have it on your website, and I sent the link to your website to everyone, so on the chat, so you guys should go there and look, the new law that was passed by Congress and signed by President Trump goes into effect on April 2nd. And so if you have not looked at that or thought through how you're going to implement that, that's something that I'm sure Bert's firm. I'm not I'm not trying to advertise for Bert's firm, but he's on the line. But that's something you all should take a look at, because it does implicate a new set of leave. And one challenge that we're having, Eric, is that we have a payroll system, and we are at the mercy of the payroll system to get those codes implemented. And there's an offsetting Social Security tax deduction that you get for that. And it's just, again, the thing that I guess is so stressful during this time period, I'm sure everybody is feeling it, is that everything is changing so quickly, and you just have to be very nimble and aware. And it's impossible in any sort of business that has multiple locations in multiple states. It's just impossible to keep track when the local county or the local city is putting an ordinance in place that's going to impact you. So
yeah, appreciate that. And keeping our employees safe is obviously very important. And Phil, there's a question. Barry Manson had a question that you talked a little bit about, that I think many of us, even those of us that are not in necessarily manufacturing facilities, but what steps have you taken, and do you think you're going to continue to have to take as we navigate this to support the personnel in mission critical warehouse, distribution, manufacturing roles that simply just can't work from home? Can you speak a little bit to that and what you've done and what you think you're going to have to continue to do?
Well, in all of our operations, whether it be a manufacturing facility, the warehouse at the plant, the distribution center across the country, and in our ceramic business, we have about 300 stores around the country that distribute ceramic tile. And actually, it's the only operation, we've only had one state where we're not considered essential business, and that's in Pennsylvania. And I can tell you the essential business designation is pretty arbitrary by the state. So you ought to get ahead of the curve and make sure in those states you got your business, your industry on the list. But we worked really hard to say, okay, wash your hands multiple times. Actually, in Europe, they set a criteria. You got to wash your hands every hour. Social distancing, reinforce that. Anywhere we can spread people out in break areas, cafeterias, we spread them out. We use empty offices, people working at home to go in for breaks and lunch, so that we are trying to support that. And people are really pretty consistent in complying with that. And we continue to push out these messages. And in our surveys, we know people understand it. The second thing we pushed really hard is telehealth. We've said, look, first of all, we cover the cost of telehealth now. We only charged $20 before. Now it's free to all employees, whether in the health plan or not. But we said, don't go to ER. They're not going to take you. Don't go to urgent care. They can't take you. Go to telehealth, and actually the utilization is pretty good. And people appreciate it because one, it doesn't cost them anything, but two, it's a pretty long wait time now versus what it has been, but they get information and they know exactly what to do next without having to go get frustrated waiting to get in a place.
Yeah, interesting. One of the other questions that was asked was in regards to, what will you, as your office potentially the footprint shrinks, how are you treating leases? What are you telling your vendors and your employees and other key partners? And I know that's a pretty broad question, and it sounds like one of the themes that I've heard everyone talk about is, communication is so key in this arena. But can you speak to either Avi or Ryan or Phil? How has that impacted you? What's the message as you've navigated this really on almost an hour-to-hour basis?
There's two questions here. One is how we communicate with our employees and for us, our independent contractor workforce, and the two is how we're managing kind of the vendors and cash and all that stuff. So the easier one is number two. We're a small enough organization. We're not Mohawk, so we don't. It's a little bit easier for us, I guess. Is that our CFO is reviewing every single payment that goes out the door to determine if this is a good use of cash. And as I think as everyone understands, we need cash to continue, and I think everyone has said that we're trying to balance that. So, we are treating every penny as gold, and we're gonna look at every payment that way. In terms of our employees and our independent contractors, we have set up a number of different communication methods. We send out regular communications to our employees and our independent contractors on what is going on. We are having daily management meetings with our managers, with the CEO leading it, where we are having conversations about things that impact everyone so they can cascade that to the organization. And then every Friday, we are having an all-employee call, which again is easier for us to do because we have 350 people versus 40,000, but having an all-employee call, we're sending out important information. In the meantime, we have a dedicated intranet spot for all COVID communications. We are sending out communications through our service partner or service provider portal to our service providers and independent contractors, anywhere from how to wash your hands and how to spot COVID, and to what we're doing in our offices to make sure everything's clean and et cetera, to stipulations that you need to use in your depositions if you're doing them remotely and administering oaths remotely. So it's a wide range of communications, but the point of it all is you have to figure out what your business can do, but to communicate very, very actively through whatever channels you have available.
Got it. Yeah, Chris Conlon asked a question which I think is pretty interesting, and Phil, probably you have some insight, especially as you were talking about the China operations, and that is we can see that we're going through the downturn, but we're hopeful and optimistic that there's going to be a rebound. Is there a lesson learned that you've experienced so far, and that is adjusting the decision making that you're making here domestically as it relates to the rebound that you can think of?
So I think the best lesson learned from China is that they moved quickly to shut down any operation that they could. Now, early in their cycle, the Chinese New Year helped, right? But even today, when people are out and about, they're still wearing masks, they're still social distancing. Stores, shopping is open back up, but as they described it in our call today, they stopped all parties or any groups from meeting. You can only go out once every 2 weeks shopping for food. In Italy, people must have some kind of formal documentation if they're coming to work. We actually have created that documentation in a couple of states in the U.S. to allow people to get to work. But I think the real thing is reducing the interaction of people is by far the most important thing to do. And where you can't, keeping people apart is impactful.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Well, listen, this has been a fantastic discussion. I want to thank all the participants and, attendees for making this happen so quickly. Later today, with our participants' permission, we have been recording the call. We're going to make some of those pieces available. Also, if there's, some additional questions that we've not had time for, we're going to address those questions to the larger audience by posting them on our LinkedIn company page. Additionally, we're going to provide a brief summary document that's going to include a number of resources, one that Avi mentioned from Fisher Phillips. You heard me talk about the Stockdale Paradox. I'd love for you all to check that out. It's on YouTube. I'll provide the link there. Some that were discussed and identified in our research as well. And all the information is going to be available on our website and our LinkedIn company page. So, I'm so thankful. Everyone on this call has just absolutely inspired me. It's really encouraged me and to really fight hard, to not give up, and to be creative as we look for new opportunities to really rise above kind of the chatter and the noise, because there's just a ton of it out there. I mean, this is a challenging time in history, and we want to really be a light for those that we can influence. So, I'm confident that, as we look back and be witness to so many different characters that are going to play out in this story, my question to you is this: it's what do you want others to say and talk about regarding the character that you played in the story? And my encouragement is to take a leading role by demonstrating just compassion for others, seeking first to understand before being understood, to empower others to play a role in being decisive, making the hard decisions that frankly none of us want to have to make. And so, you're going to persevere. You will persevere, and who knows, what will be created on the other end. After all, literally in 1 week, our businesses and our schools have gone virtual. I mean, companies have changed their business models overnight, like we heard Ryan talk about. Families have spent more time together this past week than they did all in the last month combined. That's pretty amazing. So we personally appreciate everyone in our network for allowing us to play just a small role in your story. As tragic as this situation has been, and will continue to be, amazing things are absolutely happening. Incredible stories are already being told. So let's continue to serve our family and our friends and our businesses and our community. We're praying for your strength and for your wisdom and courage that you're demonstrating every single day to help all of us through this COVID-19 pandemic. So thank you again to everyone that participated on the call, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye for now.